teaching story. So the story goes that Brother John entered the monastery of silence. That was the training of this monastic community. And the abbot said, okay, Brother John, you're welcome here. You will train with us. And the basic guideline is that you work with your own mind. And we keep silence. You will not speak until you've been here for 3 years. I will call you, and then you can speak 2 words. So Brother John enters the training. He does everything that the whole monastic community does, and the 3-year anniversary comes around, and the abbot calls him in, and he says, Brother John, you've been with us now for 3 years. What are the 2 words that you'd like to share? And Brother John says, bed hard. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, says the abbot. He said, well, we'll find you a better mattress. Brother John leaves the office, continues to practice with the community for 3 years, and the time comes when he hears the word from the abbot. The abbot calls him into his office and says, Brother John, you've now been with us for 6 years. You can share with us in 2 words your insights and your reflections. And Brother John replies, food cold. And the abbot says, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I'll talk to the kitchen monks and we'll see what we can do to make you happier. So on his 9th anniversary, Brother John is called back into the abbot's office. And the abbot says, you've now been with us for 9 years. Would you like to share in 2 words your insights? And Brother John says, I quit. And the abbot said very kindly, well, it's probably best. You've been complaining ever since you got here. Do you know this mind? Right? 3 years stewing. 3 months. We've done it in winter retreat. 3 months stewing over the same thing. Food cold. Bed hard. Our whole lives stewing on parents sucked. The complaining mind is something that I think is one of the worst poisons that we can look at in our monastic life. I know this from experience. And I see this from the experience of the people around us. It is not listed as one of the 6 root afflictions. It is not listed as one of the 20 secondary afflictions, specifically. But it is one of the most poisonous things I think we can do as a habit. And here we are kind of halfway through the program. It's possible to begin to start with the food cold, bed hard, lunch is always late kind of mind. So I thought it was worth bringing to our attention. Because we complain about everything. Venerable Chögyam has a really wonderful chapter in her book, Taming the Mind, about this very thing. But and one of the things that she points out is, well, that we don't necessarily recognize it. That's part of its deadly poison net. Is we think we're just seeing things as they are. We think things are just true. This is just how it is, and so we're stating the truth. So she cites in the book this dictionary definition defines it as an expression of pain, dissatisfaction, or resentment. Agree? And then she goes on further. I would also add it's a statement of dislike, blame, or judgment that we whine about repeatedly. Right? So this quality of blame, I think, is an important factor to look at too. So we're complaining, we're not happy, and it's somebody else's fault. The person I'm living with, the whole society, my parents. And so for me, one of the things that so what does it do? Complaining, we all know how it is to be with somebody who complains all the time. You don't want to be. You know how it creates disharmony. One person's complaint starts to affect somebody else's mind, and then this little infection of complaining pervades the whole community. We've had that experience too. And so I think one of the things that I have learned I certainly have this, but one of the things I've learned to pay attention to that is the first sign is that I have a sense of outrage. There's this kind of reaction to things shouldn't be this way. And it's this outrage that comes up. And because it's an outrage, it seems like it's justified. Like it's for the benefit of all society for me to have this complaint. It's for the benefit of all the people around me for me to have this complaint. And so this key word is things shouldn't be like this. I think that's the first tip-off. The food shouldn't be cold. The bed shouldn't be hard. Women should have been ordained for all these years. People should not go to war. And it's this sense of outrage that overrides, I think, a very genuine, in terms of our societal injustice things, it overrides a very sincere, kind of deeper response that's a sort of a sadness or even a grieving about the way things are, right? In a more mundane way, it's just sadness and grieving because I'm not getting my way. But underneath all of that, there is this belief that things should be a certain way, right? And this takes us to what Venerable Children calls the rules of the universe. I have rules of the universe that people should not go to war. Countries should not go to war. My country should not go to war. I have rules of the universe that people should not, that when lettuce comes out of the garden, it should be used that day. I have rules of the universe that says people should obey the rules of the monastery, for goodness sake. All of these things that inflict this sense of outrage, and then we're angry, and then we start to complain and grouse about it. Right? Does this sound familiar to people? I mean, you know where I'm coming from. So I don't think we need to go into lots of examples because I think we all know what it is. But I think this identification piece is really, really critical to look in our own minds and see how it comes up and how it expresses. Sometimes it's a family thing. Sometimes it's a learned form of communication. Really, it's how families connect with each other. We complain to each other and we all have the same rules of the universe, sort of. And so, as long as our rules of the universe are coinciding, we can complain together and feel like we have friendships. Whole relationships are built on this. Maybe romantic relationships, come to think of it. I hadn't thought of that. So just some antidotes, if this is coming up for you, and for certainly if you spend any time here, it will. One of the things that I have found the most useful to actually begin to recognize that is to go to the thought of things, it is what it is. To begin to recognize that things are what they are. So this takes us into meditating on the dependent arising nature, that everything arises due to causes and conditions. If I'm experiencing pain, why? Not because the bed is hard. But because I've created the causes to have this experience of pain. So I take responsibility right away, and hopefully that starts to shut things up. When we start looking at things arising from causes and conditions, then we can also look at other people and recognize that everybody too, or everything outside of us, is subject to causes and conditions, right? I can't control it, I can't change it, and that means there is no should about anything. It simply is what it is due to causes and conditions. If I can accept that, then I actually might be able to do something effective, right? So I'm not saying that we then condone terrible things that are happening in the world or even silly misbehavior around us that we think we could help the situation. But what I'm saying is that when we accept it without judgment, then we actually have the capacity to do something effective. Right? I know, and I have been one of them, people who think they're social activists. Why? Because they complain about the way things are. Do we actually do anything to change it? No. But we can say, I'm a social activist because we shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't do this. Right? So if I can just look at it, okay, this is how it is. Causes and conditions have brought this about. Then, is there something I can do about it? And this is where we have this quite famous quote from Shantideva's text, Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he says, is there something you can do about it? Don't worry, do it. Or if anger is arising, can I do something about this condition? Don't let the anger or the upset happen, do it. If there's nothing I can do about it, then there's no reason to be upset either. There's nothing I can do about it. We just let that go. So thinking in that kind of way along with then bringing the meditation on impermanence, like things change moment by moment by moment, sort of follows right in from looking at how things arise dependently due to causes and conditions, and they're changing now. So what's important for me to put my energy into? Does it really matter if lunch is 15 minutes late every day? No. In the big scheme of things, even in my hunger, I'll live. Nobody's going to die from this, right? And then the other important thing I think about is to cultivate this heart of compassion for one another. There's another quote from this Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life that I use a lot for myself, where he's talking about how anger arises due to causes and conditions. And so the punchline of this whole series of things is if we see someone, we see a friend or an enemy engaging in destructive action, think, such are his conditions, and be at ease. So I think this such are the conditions, such are his conditions, such are her conditions. Then we can develop compassion for that situation. We can develop some wisdom about what's an effective way to be in relationship with it. We can shut our mouth, not complain to the people around us, but then actually be of benefit in the situation. So, I don't know, I don't think we need to be a Brother John. I kind of worry about this, years and years and years on that. But in a much more, just to cut the habit, to use this understanding of the conditioned nature of things, to cut the habit out, because it is one of the most useless ways to use our mental energy, one of the most useless ways to use our verbal energy, and a really deadly way of infecting an entire community with our complaint.